Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Carrie Hewitt and I am the Dean of the School of Graduate Studies here at Elmhurst University, and I welcome you to our event this evening. This is our speaker series for the School of Graduate Studies and we're glad you're here. Tonight's topic is the human side of project management, and I'm going to turn it over to our program director for our Masters in Project Management, Dr. Eric Sanders.
Thank you, Carrie. So thank you for coming here today, for being in attendance today, and thinking about this side of project management. Often when we think about project management, it's all about the work and getting the work done, and that's critical. But there's this other side of it as well. And so as we think about that, there's method to my madness as we chose the title for this particular session. So let me skip ahead one slide here. In 1960, Doug McGregor wrote a book called The Human Side of Enterprise. And his point at that time was that people were being very strict in a command and control type environment, and that there was more to it than that. And so I borrowed from him. Actually, Picasso says good artists borrow, great artists steal. So I stole this from him. And so when we think about what he talked about, McGregor talked about what he called Theory X and Theory Y. And this was all about the manager's assumptions about the people who were working for them. So it's not about what the people actually were or what the people actually thought. It was what the manager assumed. And so under the Theory X command and control mindset, the manager assumes the workers are lazy, they don't want to be there, you need to have really strict control and supervision and direct instruction in order to get them to do the work. Under Theory Y, the manager assumes the workers are there because they want to, they're talented, they have the skills and abilities that they need, and so the manager's job then is to provide the resources and support that they need to do the things that they need to do. As we think about project management, at our program here at Elmhurst, the way our curriculum is set up, the first year is focused primarily on getting the work done. It's about the work. The second year is more about how you lead the people, how you manage their work, and how you manage what they do as they're doing the work. So it's focused somewhat on the work and largely on the people. And so today we wanted to look at the people side of that. And so what we're going to do is each of us share one or two stories about the way that we've done this in projects that we've worked on over the years. And then we will hopefully have a little discussion about what we're talking about. So we're just going to go in alphabetical order by first name. Chris Wall here is one of our faculty members. Lori Tompos is another. Frank LaRose is another. So we'll share our stories and then we'll move on to the discussion. So with that, the slides are going to go away and we'll talk. Chris, you have the floor.
All right, thanks, Eric.
And please introduce yourself.
So my name is Chris Wall. I'm an adjunct professor here at Elmhurst University. I've been teaching for a couple of years, and I'm teaching primarily the tools and techniques in project management. I've been a practicing program manager for over 20 years now at the director level, program management offices, primarily in the aerospace and defense industry, doing largely new product development. One of the anecdotes that popped into my mind when Eric had brought this topic up about the human side of project management was one from earlier in my career when I joined a company about 15 years ago, starting off as a senior program manager, and worked there for about a year on various programs, was enjoying my job up until the point there was another program that was run by a different program manager. It was always very troubled, and it was one of those programs that everybody looked at and thought, thank goodness I don't have to lead that. My boss, the vice president of a program management office, came in and said, yeah, we just found out that he's put his notice in, and I'd like you to take over this program. And my first reaction was, please don't make me do that. I really enjoy working here. The previous 3 program managers had all quit the company having run this program. So it was a very troubled program, not very popular. I reluctantly took it on. It is insistence. And so I immediately rolled up my sleeves and started to jump into figuring out on the technical side what was the work that had to be done. As part of that, I got the entire team of 30-plus engineers, analysts, technicians together. And one of my early discoveries was the fact that a lot of these people had never sat in the same room together or even talked to each other. They knew each other from email, they knew each other from being in the halls, but they'd never actually worked together. So it was immediately evident it was a collection of individuals working on roughly the same program, but they had no idea what their role was in the bigger picture. And then also I realized very quickly that morale was low. And so back to the McGregor theory why that Eric was just speaking about, I needed to change the organizational, the conditions that the organization was functioning under to improve their productivity. And so what I immediately began doing was I put everyone in the same room, I started them talking to each other, and created a different culture. We created a common work area. We had a war room we had created. I put signage up. We actually had shirts that we had to brand everybody and make them identify with the program, give them a sense of pride in what they were working on. And then I made sure that everybody worked together in groups and understood what everyone else's role was. And slowly over a period of 6 months, 9 months, we went from being, at one time we were over $2 million over budget and on a $30 million program and 14 months behind schedule. We were able to re-baseline with NASA, our customer. They were on the verge of canceling the entire program. We persuaded them not to do that. We managed to turn it around within a year or so. And by the end of my engagement with the program, we had a program that NASA was nominating for a Project of the Year because of the turnaround we had been able to make. So it was something I was very proud of, and something that, more importantly, the people on that team were proud of working on. And really, it was a very rewarding experience.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. I guess alphabetically I go next, so I'm going to come back again. And from Chris's perspective as leader of the program, so program director is leading multiple projects simultaneously. Let me share two related stories about work that I did as the change management consultant for a program at State Farm, large financial institution, where we were implementing a new communication system in the customer service call centers. And so my job was to help communicate and involve the people in that process. Sort of similar to what you had, as we started with one of the call centers, we had a team that had been doing this. I joined the program the third year, or at the end of the second year in a 3-year program. And so the project team was good at what they did, knew what they were doing, and worked really hard and worked really well. The clients at the call centers, for them, this was all brand new. And so each time we started out the program, the project with a new call center, we needed to sit down with the call center leadership, walk through what they were doing, how they were doing it, and go through that whole process with them. So when we started with one new call center, I remember particularly, we met in a conference room that was actually a little bit bigger than this room. This is on screen you can't quite see this, but this is a really large room. And so when we have tables are set up in a square like this, then Carrie Hewitt, Carrie's on that side of the room over there, and then about 30, 35 feet away over here on the other side of the room are other people. So we sat down to have this meeting. The tables are set up like this. So we had the project team over here, and then the call center team over there. So they were 30, 40 feet apart, and started, hey, how are you doing? And talking to one another to get this program going. And after about 5 or 10 minutes, I said, oh, hold on, time out. Can we rearrange the furniture? And so I did. They said, sure. So we eliminated the tables are in the way, moved the tables close together so that the people could actually see and hear each other, and it completely changed the dynamic of the meeting. All of a sudden, people talked to each other and related to each other, and we were able to get the project going. And so, it's something where, as I teach change management, I also, as I teach training and development, one of the key things I say is if you're going to do this work, you need to know how to move the furniture. It's just part of that. So I'm just going to leave it with the one story so that we move on. But that was something that I think was important to see, that you got to get people together so they can talk. Frank?
Okay. Hi, good evening. I'm Frank LaRose, and I'm also an adjunct professor here at Elmhurst University. I've been here for about 10 years, and I've been in the department of the business of economics and everything else. I've taught marketing and project management, entrepreneurship and innovation, several courses in project management, and they seem to keep bringing me back. And you're at the right place if you're looking at this school to get your project management training. I've been in the business for about 30 years, and the way I actually got into it was I used to be technical. I was a programmer 30 years ago. I'm 100 years old right now, but I don't want to go back that far. And what I did was this company, I said, geez, I want to be a project manager when I was a manager of programming. And they said, sure, no problem. And they sent me off to a school, I think in Twin Cities, and I learned how to work with Microsoft Project. That was how they taught you project management. Well, it's changed quite a bit over the years. And I'm going to get more into what I've been doing. So the last 30 years, I've been at the director level, senior manager level. I have my own business. I do consulting. My last big company that I was with was Verizon for 15 years. And, all these big corporations have these big changes and stuff. And at one point I said, it's time for me to move on. So I've been doing my own consulting I surprised myself the other day, for at least 10 years. And it's quite a bit of work, but it can be fun. And so now I want to get a little bit into project management. And if you want to think about what I tell my students and what's really important. And if you happen to end up in one of my classes, you'll find that probably every class I'm going to ask you a couple different questions. And I'm going to ask them to you tonight. So if you end up in my class, I'm going to ask you this again if I find out that you were in this program. So what is the number one responsibility of a project manager? The first thing, 90% of your job is what? I won't test anybody in here, I get in trouble, but communication, right? That is what your job is. You need to communicate downwards, upwards, sideways to your team. That's what it's really all about. And then I'm going to give you a couple tidbits of information that will make you successful if your career is going to be in project management. And what you want to think about is a triple constraint. So you want to think about schedule, budget, and you want to think about scope. So you want to be able to communicate all that stuff. Where's my schedule? Am I on schedule? Am I ahead of schedule? Behind schedule? Am I delivering when I was supposed to do this? And what's my budget? Where am I? You gave me a $4 million budget, and I spent it all in the first 3 months. That's not a good thing if it's a 2-year project. And what was the scope? What were the deliverables that you were? What was the expectations? And I won't get into what I tell everybody about. You need to understand, where does your project fit within the organization? Why are you doing it? And usually I'll give you 3 reasons here. The company wants to increase revenues, decrease costs, improve operational efficiencies, and that's what you get out of those 2 things. And the final thing would be for legal requirements, right? Those are the reasons why you have a project. And if you're in a company today, I ask a lot of my students, how many people are in a company today that does not have a project? And you'd be amazed that sometimes I'll have 2 or 3 people in the class that will raise their hand and say, we don't have any projects in our company. Well, to me, I tell them the next thing, my advice to them is, you need to go find another company. Because if your company doesn't have a project, you're not innovative. You're not going anyplace at all. You're in trouble. The company's in trouble. So we could think, just like if you think about Kodak, okay, Kodak thought that they had it many years ago with the film industry, and they said, we're really good. We don't need anything at all. We're not going to go to digital. Well, guess what? Kodak's no longer around because of that, right? So I'm going to give you an example of one of my projects that I had when I was with Oracle. And Larry Ellison was the president and CEO at the time, and I was like way down on the totem pole, but somehow Larry Ellison and Ray Lane, who was his right-hand guy, somehow ended up saying, hey, you know what? Go get Frank LaRose, and we'll send him out to this company and go deal with them. This company, I don't really want to mention their name, but they have big helium balloons. You see them floating by, and it's either, think Goodyear, BF Goodrich, or something like that, right? And this company was in Minnesota. And what they did was they called up Larry Ellison directly, the president of this company, and said, we just implemented your stuff. It was ERP, Enterprise Relation Program, right? And we want all of our money back. We're going to sue you. Your stuff is terrible. And so they sent me out there to fix this. And I walked into this cafeteria-like thing, and there's the president of this division, all of his vice presidents, their directors and their managers, their program managers in the different departments, or functional managers. And it started off with, this is the truth, the president of this organization started off with the F-bomb to me, telling me, I want my money back, I'm suing you, I already called Larry Ellison, you guys are done. I said, well, just give us some time. Let's think about what's going on here, right? Because now we're getting back into, remember those three things, right? Schedule, budget, scope, and what's the big thing? What's the number one responsibility of a project manager? Communication, right? Okay? And so this is what I started looking at. What happened? So Oracle has all these ERP applications, which are, if you're not familiar with it, it could be accounting, could be accounts receivable, payables, inventory, whatever, right? And this is a manufacturing company, and by the way, what they make is pitot tubes. Pitot tubes are the things that detect how fast you're going in an airplane or a rocket. So it was pretty much for a rocket. Because we always say, well, when we're working on a project, well, that's not rocket science. Well, this one was rocket science. And so I started looking into it, and myself and the CIO started working together. They had a new CIO. And what we found out was, first of all, Oracle did not implement the software there, okay? But did the president really understand all of that? And what they had was because sometimes when you're buying and doing a project, is it about price? Is it about time, right? Because, I won't get into all that whole thing there, but somehow they had this company called Exor. And it was ex-Oracle employees that left Oracle and started their own company. And they said, well, we'll implement it for you for a lot less than what Oracle's going to charge you, right? So they did, and they implemented the whole thing. And in the meantime, this company had let a whole bunch of people go. And all the functional managers, the business departments and everything, those people that had knowledge about the systems were gone. And so at one point they said this project was supposed to be delivered, think about schedule, on this day, okay, on let's say October 15th. It had to be here. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're shutting off our systems, our old systems, from the main headquarters, and we're just going to run on our own servers. And that's what they did. They shut everything off, and the people that knew how to run the systems were gone. They were no longer with the company, and everything stopped. They couldn't order materials. They couldn't build their pitot tubes, and the whole place stopped. The whole manufacturing process stopped. And it was really nothing wrong with the systems. It was more about communication, right? And if you don't communicate that, so when you're implementing a system as a system integrator or as a project manager, your team, you can't just think that you put it in and you can walk away and they're going to go ahead and it's going to work. And so what we did was we brought Oracle people in, quite a few people, and trained all the staff, got them all back up, showed them how it worked, and voila, they were back up and running in a very short period of time, and that's my story.
All right, thank you, Frank.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Frank.
You're welcome.
I'm Lori Tompos, and I'm also an adjunct here. And I have I had a master's in education and all this great experience prior, and then I had a situation where I found out that that Elmhurst College was putting, at the time, was going to put their MBA program online. And so I was so excited because I had been doing a lot of teaching for online universities where they had wanted to have an online arm because they were recognizing the need for that. And so when I found out that they were going to put their MBA program online, I literally ran right over, raced right in, and was like, oh, heard bells and chimes, and was like, oh my gosh, I'm so interested in this. I have all this great experience. I have all this education. And they're like, do you have an MBA? And I was like, I do not. And they're like, well, you need one to teach. And I was like, oh, okay, well, let me walk down the hall and grab that. So I got an MBA, and then I walked down the hall again, and I was like, okay, I want to teach. That's what I want to do. And they're like, oh, would you be willing to teach communication? Yes, I would, because I'm all about it, right? So what I do now, and what I've done, like what my mission and purpose in life is to help leaders be more effective communicators, because that helps them be better. And when you help the leader, everybody on the team gets better. So I connect leadership to the project management, to the program management, to the program director. Everything begins with good leadership. And so there's a wild connection to that. So that's my passion, is teaching about corporate communication skills. I connect that to my earlier time frame when I was in the Army. So I'm one of the first women to get in and out of graduating from West Point at the United States Military Academy. And I had learned a brand new missile system called the Patriot missile system. I was in air defense artillery. So I was air assault, which is jumping out of, rappelling out of helicopters and off of cliffs and sides of buildings. And then I was airborne, which is like jumping out of airplanes. And then I was air defense artillery, which is with the Patriot missile system. I made it my business to really make sure that I knew what I was doing. So for me, competence is also a big thing. So not only knowing, what the communication is, but also literally having those technical skills and making sure that you're confident in what you're doing, because competence brings confidence. Right? And then you combine that with the other C, the important C, which is communication skills, and that's a great recipe for success. So like in my case, I learned the Patriot, I learned how to set it up really well, learned how to run it really well, and then we had a war. So I got pulled into the desert with 11 infantrymen, all of whom I was in charge, none of whom I knew, and had to lead them. And I looked around and I realized, wow, I'm the new one. I'm the least experienced, I'm brand new, I'm gonna let them do their jobs. And so I'm gonna lead and not manage. Let me figure out what they need to be successful. And I liken that to project management, because it was the same thing. In the Army, it's your mission. Our mission is to defend and protect, and we're gonna defend this part of the royal family and this air base. And so I liken it to those kinds of missions that happen that are like the projects that you see, where we have a time, we have a scope, we have a frame we've got to work within, and once we meet the goals and objectives, then we move on to the next. And then we reassemble, right, with a new team, and we're figuring it out. And it's an iterative process, right, where we're always having to cover vision, mission, purpose, and goals, right, and make sure that everybody has clarity on that, shared meaning and shared understanding for every project that we do, every program that we do. So the communication piece of it is the front end of it, and it's all along as well. Right? So when you're putting everybody together with the schedule, the scope, and the timing, all of those pieces are things that must be communicated so that everyone is on the same page with what your goals and objectives are.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay. So now you understand a bit of the context around managing the work and leading the people and working through people to get things done. And you've heard stories from each of us about how we've done that in different contexts. So now we have a few people in the room here. I assume we have a few people online also. What questions do you have? How can we elaborate further?
When you first start a project, what is the first thing that's the most important thing that you do with either the team or when you're thinking about like what that first step is? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
The first thing you do when you start a project is you have a kickoff meeting, and you need to communicate to your entire team who's doing what the goals and the objectives are of the project itself. You can talk about schedule, the budget, the scope. Not everybody needs to know the details, but it depends on the project itself. Is it one where it's relatively small and it's a huge team? It also depends on the structure of the team itself. Is it going to be waterfall or is it going to be an agile project?
I would say that one of the important things is, from the onset, is to make certain that all the key stakeholders are aligned on on the objectives.
Right.
And to ensure that everyone clearly understands what the objectives are, what done looks like, and then more importantly, what success looks like. So at the end of this, are those objectives clearly understood and is everyone in agreement? And if they're not, then the beginning is the best time to clear up any misconceptions and get everyone aligned.
I know you mentioned waterfall, and I heard you mention agile. Can you speak a little bit about a little bit more in depth about what those are, how useful they are in different projects?
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to do it? So.
Go ahead, Frank. That's fine.
Okay.
That's we can all answer it, but
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So waterfall is more of a.
let me just restating the question. Jim asked, what's the difference between waterfall project management and agile project management? They're the two primary forms of project management right now.
I'd say that waterfall is more like a cookbook method, right? And what you have is you have different phases or phase gates, right? So the first particular part of I'll make it relatively simple. You initiate the project itself, and then you've got, planning that goes in there, but you don't go to the next step. So you initiate, you plan, you design, you build or develop, right, or construct, and then you test it, and then you deploy it. And you don't go from one phase to the next phase until the first phase is done. And that's why some projects, like government projects, take like 4 years, 10 years. They never finish. I've had
Right.
opportunities with projects with government jobs that I've been on where the people that initiated the project had left the organization and no one knew what the scope was and what they were supposed to do. But because it was budgeted, they wanted it to be done. I'll let that go.
So that's waterfall. What's
That's
agile?
waterfall.
Right, forward.
So if you think about agile, think about agility. It's fast, it's quick. So you want to deliver things that you can put together quickly. So you don't want to wait 2 years or 3 years to see what the end result's going to be, right? You want to do something in maybe 2 or 3 months, or maybe 2 months or 1 month. So when you're doing agile, you have a smaller team, 9 to 10 people. You put them in a room. You have all the key people in there. The whole approach is quite a bit different. And you let them all work together to do what they have to do in order to get what the requirements were that the business wanted. And so that's really kind of an agile approach.
And to build on that, when I think about like waterfall, you think of you've got the goals and objectives that you start with, right? That you have clarity on, and then you kind of back plan. Okay, so we're planning this for 2 years, we're planning, and then you think through a clear plan. With agile, you start kind of forward. This is where we are, and you could end up somewhere else. You could have to take a pivot and be flexible. And so it's very, I feel like one goes back and one goes forward.
And just adding slightly different perspective to that, waterfall's been around for a long time, and you think of it, the reason it's called waterfall is because the work cascades from one level to the next to the next. Agile came out of the software development world. And so the idea behind software development is, especially if you're developing new software, you're not sure what the end product is going to be. So you do it in steps, and you get the MVP, the minimum viable product, and you have that working, and then you add a feature. And so each step of the project, each stage, builds on the next one, so it rolls and it flows forward. So it's just two very different ways of trying to accomplish the same end. So it's, both are important, and we teach both methods here in the program, in the project management program. Virtually any project management program in the world is going to do that today, but we do it really well. So we want to make sure that you understand that.
But think about Agile is really the umbrella of how development works like that with whatever you're doing. So, for example, you may have Scrum, which would fall underneath Agile, and there's all kinds of different Agile processes. So Agile is just the top level, and there's probably 20 or 30 different approaches, but it doesn't fit for everything.
Right.
So you have waterfall, and some organizations do waterfall, like where I'm at now, my clients and some of the teams that I work on, and I think right now I've got about 15 projects, and they're a variety of a little bit of everything. Some are waterfall, some are agile, and some are hybrid, combination of both. Not all things work. Not all things are agile. Not all things are waterfall. So if I thought about, I'm building a skyscraper, it's really hard to say that's agile. I'm going to change on the 32nd floor. I think we're going to make that 32nd floor 18 feet wider. No, you can't, okay? But you might do it, your architects might do it during design. So there's a combination of both of them, depending on what you're doing, that would make it more hybrid.
Right. That's kind of what I was intending to say earlier. Like with the goals and objectives with waterfall, let's say you're gonna build a structure. That has to be in place. Where you have the flexibility is maybe on some of the design of the actual floors, but you're not going to change the scope of the building, the shape of the building, that kind of thing.
Any other questions?
I'll ask another question. So as we are sitting here at university, I would ask, do you have any advice we may have people joining us, who are undergrads or graduate students. Do you have any advice to those students? And I don't know if that advice is different depending on the different populations, but what advice would you give to an undergraduate student or a graduate student who is interested in project management and the field of project management, and that's something they want to do? So.
I'm going to put Chris on the spot here, since Frank and Lori and I were talking quite a bit on the last question. We'll put Chris on the hot seat.
Yeah, we got through waterfall and agile. No, I think one of the important points, the question again was about advice for young would-be promising project managers. And I'm getting back to the human side of the practice. I would say advice would be to learn early on about emotional intelligence and getting back to the elements of leadership that Lori was talking about, and the importance of being a good leader and the difference between being a good leader versus being a good manager, and being able to engage people. Emotional intelligence plays heavily into the human side, and being an effective leader of a team, being empathetic with your team, being able to communicate. Obviously, we talked about that extensively, and understand the science and the data-driven aspects of it, of project management, also the elements of the human side and the emotional intelligence, how that plays into motivating people and working with them on a human level.
Okay, great. And this time I'm going to go to to the strategic level where you took the tactical level about how you succeed as a project manager, if you're thinking about what program you want to go into and whether project management is right for you, or you're thinking maybe, since we're in the School of Business, project management or MBA. And if you want to work in an environment where you have work that has a defined beginning and a defined end, and you have a result that you can see at the end of it, project management is your world, because that's the definition of a project. If you want to lead people in organizations doing a variety of things for an extended period of time, stay with the same organization for a long time, or be an entrepreneur and start your own business, then the MBA might be a better fit for you. Both are great programs. It's just a difference in how you want to apply your talent and your skills in what you want to do over time. We have both options here. It's just a question of which way do you want to steer your career, and we're happy to help.
Well, and the other recommendation would be, if you want to be in project management, get into a role with project management.
Yes.
Right, and learn and get some experience under your belt. See how things are run and see what you really like. Because as Nelson Mandela said, I either win or I learn. So every experience that you have is a learning experience where you take away things of like, oh, wow, this was run really well. I want to make sure that I capture that when I'm in charge. I want to be sure and do that. What you don't want to do is just rotely do what your manager does, and then you get promoted and you have no idea of what to do with the skill set. So really take it upon yourself to be really curious and figure out what makes people motivated. What does the why theory really mean? How do we make people want to come to work, want to be on our team, want to work for you, want to get these goals accomplished, and want to bring their very best to work? That's what we're talking about.
I will mention a little bit about, trying to get into it. I would say that, and I tell everybody that you should really have a couple years of experience in business or whatever you're going to be doing. If you go straight into the project management program and you don't have much of a clue about what that's all about, that could be pretty difficult. So if you're working in a company, after you finish your undergraduate degree, try to see if you can be in a department where they have a project and you can participate in those projects, right? So you get some exposure to it. Because I can tell you right now, it's kind of like trying to go out and get credit without credit. You don't have any credit, but you want to go buy a car or a house or something. Go and look online and look at project manager positions, and you can see what the requirements are. And the requirement is usually that you have a PMP, Project Management Professional. That's the gold standard, right? You want to have that. In order to get that certification, you have to have at least 3 years of experience in project management. So a lot of people think, oh, I'm jumping into project management. I'm going to go out there and, man, as soon as I finish school, I'm going to be making $400,000 a year. Give me a call. I'll come and work over there with you. Okay. Go get some experience and make sure that this is really what you want to do, because it's a very tough job. It's a lot of pressure. You are responsible for everybody. You might have 200 or 300 people working for you. I was just looking at, just recently I'm finishing like about 18,000 hours worth of work, not myself. And but there's a huge amount of pressure. When Joey or Mary or whoever doesn't do their job, they get in trouble, but you're the one who's responsible for delivering for everybody's thing, and you're responsible for making sure that the client gets the project on schedule, on budget, the scope is done, and it's of high quality. It's a lot of pressure, but it can be a lot of fun. You can learn a lot.
Yes, Aditya.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, as projects become more global, you talked about the human side. How do you deal with international and multicultural?
Okay. Oh, you want me to jump on that? Oh, I'm sorry, I keep answering. I've had all of those, so.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Chris, have you dealt with multicultural projects?
I've dealt with multicultural projects.
Okay, so the question is, oh, go ahead, you repeat.
So the question was how project managers deal with multicultural projects, dealing in global environments, global corporations. So yeah, I have experience dealing with customers around the world, suppliers around the world, other stakeholders and elements of the project in different continents. It makes it more challenging. I think it's gotten easier in the last few years with the advent of the technology and how virtual meetings have transformed for all of us, even whether you're domestic or international. But it is important. The time zones are always a challenge. There's really no way around that. The technology is to find a way to get everybody. The world is still round, so that's an element it's a challenge regardless. The language barriers, the cultural barriers are all. It's about sensitivity, and it's about understanding where the other people are, what their needs are, and it takes a greater, I'll say, sense of empathy or sense of understanding where they're coming from, and trying to put yourselves on an even plane with what you're used to and not making assumptions. It's a little more challenging, but that's where I would start. And then it's a lot of kind of like an agile. You have to dive into it and see what's working and what's not, and then make adjustments as you go along.
And let me just add that that's something that we recognize as we've designed and deliver the program. So one of the first courses students take if they start in the spring term, or first course of the second year if they start in the fall, is organizational management. That actually, it's parallel with our MBA program. And part of that course includes how you deal with multicultural situations. We build that into the program because we have to face it. That's part of the world. I'm sure, Laura, you deal with that in the communications class because that's part of the communications world. So yeah, it's something we understand is necessary in the world, and we build it into the program. Thank you.
I have to say, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Lori, and then.
I was just going to say how exciting it is, actually. With all the technology, we have so much more capability now to really connect with people from all over the world. It's really exciting when it all comes together and everybody's there, and you can move so much faster now because of it.
Yeah. Okay, Aditya.
Yes, I wanted to ask, what are the challenges you US after doing project management, from shifting from general project management into construction management, and what are the steps to take?
Good question. Want me to take that?
Okay. Yeah, okay. I'll repeat the question you talked. So the specific question is, how do you move from general project management into a specific field of project management, like construction management?
Okay, so the project management program that we have here, and I've had people in my courses that are construction project managers also. And so it's all, the concepts are all the same. There's really no big difference. Where the difference is that if you are building a 40-story building downtown Chicago and it's construction, there's a lot of different materials that have to go into it, weight bearing. So there are actually programs out there that are for construction project management, and the software is different, and you have to get these packages that help with bills of material and all that. For example, where I live, I think when I built my home, there was I think we did like 90 houses in my development, my area. And the guy who was the general manager and the project manager of the whole area, he was only like 25 years old.
Wow.
I thought that was amazing, right? And I remember sitting down, talking to him, telling me what you did. And he got into project management, and he learned, construction project management. And there are specific programs out there that you can go to if that's the direction that you want. Maybe after here you jump, ahead a little bit. I think it was a 2-year program, and he's running a multi-million-dollar housing development. So then again, it depends. If you're a civil engineer, you might be on, building highways or, bridges and stuff like that, that kind of construction. So it just depends on what you want to do, and you'd have to, do more research into that.
And a key part of that Lori touched on earlier is getting into the work and getting some of the work experience. The basic concepts of project management are going to be the same.
Right.
You're planning the work, you're designing what's going to be done, you're allocating tasks, you're keeping track of the budget. So those basic concepts remain the same. The application is different. The software you use to manage the projects is different. The basic concepts remain the same. So, and if you can get an internship or get working with a project like that, it's going to help you learn to build those specific skills. So we're teaching you the general skills here through this program. The specific skills for a certain industry or a certain type of project, you're going to learn on the job.
Mm-hmm.
Great question, though.
I was going to ask, artificial intelligence is all the rage now. How AI going forward would affect, or what would it have to do with project management? Maybe some of the benefits of it, or even if there's any negative parts of AI relative to project management.
Interesting.
So that's something that I've covered.
Repeat the
I'm
question.
sorry. Yeah, the question was about how artificial intelligence, AI, is impacting project management, the industry as a whole. So that's something in the tools and techniques project management course that I teach. Last year I realized the textbook doesn't cover this at all. It's from 2022, and most of us didn't even know what AI stood for back then. And it's becoming a reality so quickly. There's apps for our phones now. We're using it on a more regular basis. I know Frank and I have discussed the Project Management Institute offers courses in AI and generative AI, what it means and how to use it. There's been a recent study Gartner did that by the end of the decade that AI will replace 80% of the work done by project managers. And initially that's a scary concept, but you realize that a lot of that work that it's doing is a lot of the busy work. Right. It could be taking the meeting minutes, it could be assigning tasks, it could be filling out templates. So it's doing a lot, and it's freeing up time and energy that the project managers can dedicate to something else. It's not necessarily going to put us out of business, but it is a tool that can be used and leveraged and make us more productive. And so, like any other new technology, you can be one of the people who embraces the change and grabs it and be on the cutting edge, or you can resist it and be like the dinosaurs, and you fall behind the curve. So I encourage everyone to get educated on AI, not even project managers, but obviously all of us have a challenge in life. But it's a very effective tool. I'm learning more about it. Frank and I, like I said, we've discussed this. And Frank, do you have any other comments?
Yeah, that's a really good point, is that PMI has a couple of really great programs on artificial intelligence. And actually that's something that maybe someday here at Elmhurst University will offer some artificial intelligence. But there's different types of ways that you can look at artificial intelligence, right? We all know about ChatGPT and ChatGPT-4 and Pilot that Microsoft has, right? But what this is, these are large, huge databases of data, billions of amounts of data, right? And it's just collecting all of this information, and there's different levels of it, right? And so you go, like for example, here at Elmhurst University, we could actually go out and purchase our own artificial intelligence database and have all of our systems here running off of that. But that'd be pretty expensive. So there are places where you can go out and buy that to do that, but not everybody's using ChatGPT-4. There are other sources. And when it comes to project management and managing projects, I think it's still evolving and developing, but it can help you. I see it more as a tool. Rather, everything that's out there is like a tool. I think about Microsoft Project, and I remember having a project manager that was working for me when I was a director, and I used to say, well, where are you with your project? And why is it that Jane has to work for 142 hours a week for the next 7 months on the project, and so does Jim. He's got 275 hours a week. Well, that's not possible. Well, first of all, it wasn't AI that did it. And I remember her saying to me, oh, well, Microsoft Project did that. Well, that's a tool, right? So think about AI as a tool. How will we use it with project management? It's not going to manage your projects for you. Not yet, anyways.
Back to the human piece, you have to apply some logic to it and bring that common sense element to what it's delivering. I'll give an anecdote of recently, within the past year, I had to hire a position that didn't exist in my company for working for me, and it was for an associate project manager role, and it was a very specific, very defined role, and I could have sat down, I needed a 2-page job description. It would have taken me a couple hours to do. Actually, one of the people who sat next to me had mentioned using ChatGPT, and I thought, oh, I'll give this a try. And I sat down, and within 20 minutes, I had the framework of a job description. I spent more time just having to customize it specifically to use our company's acronyms and the terminology and to making it specific, which I couldn't expect ChatGPT or an AI tool to know. But I was able to compile that within less than a half an hour. I had the framework of that job description. Saved me, a couple more hours of time. And I realized, okay, that was my first dipping my toe in the water. Like, okay, now I'm starting to think about what are other creative ways I can. Somebody referred to it as a stochastic parrot. There's a lot of information out there, and it's basically an administrative assistant that we all have at our disposals. So you just treat it like that.
I'm always trying to learn something new, and I have a ton of hobbies that I have, and one of them is photography. And so one of the things I did recently was I bought a new camera. And I've been doing photography remember I'm 100 years old, so I'll just keep it at 30 years old, okay? And so I bought a new Canon. And actually it has AI embedded into the whole thing, right? And it can analyze the picture that you're taking, okay? But I'm not using it for that. But I decided what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to South Africa, and I'm gonna go on one of these safaris and take all these pictures of these wild animals and everything. But it's not going to work out in my schedule. Long story short. So I said, well, I need to practice. So over the last month, I've gone to a couple zoos. I went to the Brookfield Zoo, which I'd never been to before. Oh, wow. And the day I went there, it was like about 1,000 degrees out, and there was only like one animal outside. They were all inside their caves and stuff. And then a couple weeks ago, I went to the Milwaukee Zoo, and it was in the 50s. They were all outside. Everything was there, right? And so I went home and I got these pictures out. I'm on my screen, okay, and I'm using, what am I using?
Some AI program.
Yeah. I'm using I'm using Lightroom, right? And so Adobe Lightroom and whatever, and now they all have AI in there. And I realized that this one picture of this snow leopard that I have, about 6 inches above him where he's in his cave, I can see the fence and people walking behind him. I'm like, I don't want that picture. So I'm like, well, it's got AI in here. So I said, hey, AI, in Lightroom, I just took the thing and swept it over the top and said, go out and regenerate this thing, right? Bam, like 10 seconds it came back, it rebuilt the cave for me, analyzed the entire picture and filled it all in. You'll never know in a million years. And it gives you like 3 or 4 choices. So that's what's happening in AI. Think about what it's going to do for our projects.
Wow.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a fun chat. Thank you, Frank, Lori, and Chris. And again, I'm Eric Sanders, Program Director for the Masters in Project Management here at Elmhurst University. Thank you for your time and attention. And if you're thinking about a good project management program, come visit us. Have a nice evening. Bye.